Margaret used to wake up with the sunrise, once a gardener, always an early riser. But now, at 71, mornings had become a struggle. Her knees creaked before her feet even touched the floor. Her hands were stiff, her fingers curled from sleep, and her mind foggy. She'd forget why she walked into a room, or where she placed her glasses. Even her energy, once dependable as the sun, was dim. Just aging, she told herself. It's normal. But deep down, it didn't feel right. She was eating what she thought was healthy: toast, tea, maybe a banana. But nothing helped. Until one day, her neighbor Evelyn, a retired dietitian, stopped by with a small container of something unexpected, a homemade morning snack. "Try this," Evelyn said. "It's not magic, but it works better than most pills they'll offer you." It was a simple mix: a handful of walnuts, pumpkin seeds, dried blueberries, a sprinkle of cinnamon, and a small square of dark chocolate, served with a boiled egg on the side. Margaret was skeptical, but Evelyn explained. "You need anti-inflammatory fats for your joints, antioxidants for your brain, and protein to carry you through the day. This hits all three, but you've got to take it seriously. Eat it every morning before the fatigue sets in." That next day, Margaret swapped her toast for the mix. It tasted earthy and sweet, crunchy and satisfying. But more than that, it felt nourishing, like her body recognized something it had been missing. Within a week, she wasn't just moving easier, she was thinking clearer. And for the first time in months, she looked at the sunrise and didn't dread the day ahead. She welcomed it, because now she had a reason to believe her best hours were still in front of her. By the third morning, Margaret no longer needed to be convinced. She found herself walking to the kitchen with purpose, her joints still stiff but not aching, her mind clearer than it had been in weeks. She prepared her snack with care: 6 walnuts, a teaspoon of pumpkin seeds, a small scoop of dried blueberries, 1 square of 85% dark chocolate, and a dusting of cinnamon. Next to it, a boiled egg, warm and soft. It didn't look like much, but it felt powerful. After decades of starting her day with sugar and starch, this was a reset. She began to read more. Evelyn had sparked something in her. She learned that walnuts were rich in omega-3s, the kind that reduced inflammation in joints and nourished brain cells. Pumpkin seeds offered magnesium and zinc, both critical for nerve function and muscle strength. Blueberries were loaded with antioxidants, protecting her memory from the oxidative stress that creeps in after 60. Even the dark chocolate played a role. Just 1 square delivered flavonoids that improved blood flow to the brain. And the egg? That was her morning anchor, providing protein to prevent the blood sugar dips that used to leave her dizzy and drained before noon. She had never thought of food as medicine, not like this. But now, her mornings felt lighter, her thinking sharper, and her knees, though still aging, weren't locking up the way they used to. She didn't need painkillers to get dressed. She didn't sigh when bending to tie her shoes. This snack was small, but it was targeted, built on purpose and proven nutrients. Margaret wasn't chasing fads or cutting corners. She was giving her body the fuel it had long been denied. And in return, it was starting to respond. Not dramatically, but faithfully, one steady morning at a time. Margaret began keeping a small journal, something she hadn't done in years. Not pages of thoughts, just simple notes. No knee pain this morning. Felt focused during the grocery run. Didn't nap, didn't need to. These weren't grand milestones, but they were markers of progress. What surprised her wasn't how quickly she was improving, but how much her previous routine had been holding her back. For years, she'd started her mornings with toast and jam, maybe cereal, foods that spiked her blood sugar and offered little in return. Her body had been crying out for nutrients, and she'd been feeding it fluff. Evelyn had said something she couldn't forget. After 60, your body still works. It just stops forgiving shortcuts. Now her new snack wasn't a treat. It was a strategy. Every ingredient had a role. The walnuts reduced joint inflammation, allowing her hands to move more freely. The cinnamon helped stabilize blood sugar, so her energy no longer crashed mid-morning. The blueberries, nature's brain food, brought a calm, steady focus she hadn't felt in years. She started noticing small things. She could open jars again. Her handwriting didn't wobble as much. Conversations didn't leave her searching for words. And it all started before 9 a.m. That snack became more than fuel. It became a promise that her best days weren't behind her, that healing didn't always need prescriptions, that strength could return through small, consistent acts of care. Margaret hadn't set out to become healthier. She just wanted to stop feeling like she was fading. But now, as she reached for her little bowl each morning, she realized something deeper. She was no longer bracing for the day. She was preparing for it, and that shift, quiet and profound, had already changed everything. The transformation was becoming visible, not just to Margaret, but to the people around her. Her daughter, who stopped by every Thursday, paused at the door one morning and said, "You look different. Lighter somehow." Margaret smiled and tapped the bowl on her kitchen counter. "Just changed what I eat first." Her daughter raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" Margaret nodded. "It's not about eating less. It's about feeding more of what matters." She walked over without wincing. No cane, no careful lowering into the chair. Her daughter noticed, and so did Margaret, because mornings used to mean surviving the fog, the stiffness, the slow build into function. Now they meant momentum. She explained how every part of the snack worked. Walnuts for her joints and memory, pumpkin seeds for strength, cinnamon for balance, and the egg for long-lasting energy. The simple act of nourishing her cells before her day even began had changed how that day unfolded. Her daughter listened closely. She had 2 kids of her own and often skipped breakfast entirely. "I thought aging just meant feeling like this," she said quietly, "but maybe it's not supposed to be this hard." Margaret reached for a second boiled egg. "It doesn't have to be." That evening, her daughter messaged her a picture. Her own version of the morning snack, sitting beside a steaming mug of green tea. Margaret teared up, not because she'd inspired someone, but because she had proof that it was working, that the ripple effect of a better choice could stretch beyond her own body. Aging had once felt like slipping away, like becoming invisible. But now, with every nutrient-dense bite, Margaret was reclaiming space. In her mind, in her movement, in the morning light. And she wasn't just eating, she was rebuilding. Margaret's next checkup surprised even her doctor. "Your inflammation markers are down," he said, scanning her file. "And your blood pressure's better than it's been in years. What changed?" She told him everything. No new pills, no fancy supplements, just a shift in what she ate within the first hour of waking up. He raised an eyebrow but nodded slowly. "That's exactly when your body's most receptive. Morning choices set your inflammation, blood sugar, and energy for the entire day." Margaret had felt the truth of that before she ever heard it explained. She could sense when her body had been fed properly. Her knees didn't resist her. Her brain didn't fog over by noon. Her fingers stayed steady while folding laundry or flipping through old recipe books. What once felt like decline now felt like a lack of nutrients, and she was finally giving her body what it needed to repair. The doctor smiled and said something she wouldn't forget. "You're not reversing time. You're giving your years more life." That struck her deeply, because Margaret hadn't expected to feel like herself again. She hadn't expected mornings to be a source of power instead of pain. But here she was, stronger in her 70s than she had been in her late 60s, simply by removing empty carbs and adding intentional fuel. She began looking forward to breakfast. She savored every bite of those walnuts and blueberries, knowing they were working on the inside even before her feet hit the floor, and she realized this wasn't a diet. It was a quiet act of care, a way of saying to her body each morning, "I remember you. I still need you. And her body, in return, was answering, I'm still here. Let's keep going. The real surprise came 2 weeks later when Margaret forgot to prepare her snack one morning. She'd been up late, slept poorly, and grabbed a slice of toast with butter just to have something in her stomach. By mid-morning, she felt it. A dull ache in her knees, a tightness in her lower back, and a strange fog settling behind her eyes. She stared at a half-written grocery list and couldn't remember why she'd started it. The old fatigue was back, creeping in like an unwelcome guest. That's when it hit her. This wasn't how she was supposed to feel. This was how she used to feel. And in that contrast, she saw the truth. Not in theory, but in her own body. The snack wasn't a placebo. It was her body's missing link. That evening, she prepared everything in advance. Walnuts in a small jar, blueberries and pumpkin seeds pre-measured, eggs boiled and ready. She wouldn't make that mistake again. Because the clarity, energy, and strength she'd gained weren't just better days. They were the result of better choices. Her body had been whispering for years, and she had finally started to listen. The next morning, with her bowl back in hand, she felt herself return. Her joints were smoother, her mind sharper, her mood calmer. That one missed day reminded her that recovery was fragile, not permanent unless nurtured, and so Margaret made a promise to herself quietly while stirring cinnamon into her bowl. Every morning, I will choose to begin again. Not with guilt, not with fear, but with the calm knowledge that healing lives in habits. And this small bowl, this simple act of care, was her anchor. A reminder that she was not powerless, not fading, but building strength where it mattered most. From the inside out. Margaret began calling it her morning medicine, though it came without labels, side effects, or warnings. Each ingredient was now second nature. Walnuts for inflammation, blueberries for clarity, pumpkin seeds for strength, cinnamon for balance, and that soft-boiled egg to hold it all together. The kitchen routine had become almost sacred, not rushed, not distracted, just calm preparation, a warm light from the window, and a quiet thank you to the body that was still showing up for her. She didn't need coffee to feel awake anymore. The energy that came after her snack was steady, not jittery. Her brain didn't stutter through conversations. Her body didn't beg for rest before noon. She even found herself walking farther in the mornings, lingering in the garden, and reaching for old hobbies she once put away when pain made everything too hard. That snack had become her starting line, the thing that told her brain and body, you're safe, you're fueled, you're ready. And it wasn't just physical. Her mood shifted too. She felt more patient, more open. She'd always thought anxiety and frustration were just part of getting older, but now she saw they were symptoms of imbalance, of exhaustion, of years spent giving the body less than it needed. That small bowl had become a signal to every part of her being. It's time to rebuild. And rebuild she had, step by step, spoon by spoon. Margaret now knew that healing didn't require perfection. It required consistency, curiosity, and compassion. And with each bite of her snack, she felt all three. This wasn't a trend. It was a ritual of respect for her muscles, for her memory, for her years ahead. She wasn't just aging well. She was aging with intention. And that, she realized, was the greatest strength of all. Margaret started noticing changes in the mirror. Not vanity, but vitality. Her posture was straighter. Her skin had more color. Her eyes, once dulled by fatigue, now carried a quiet brightness. Even the lines on her face seemed softer, not because they disappeared, but because the exhaustion behind them had. Her joints no longer dictated her schedule. Her thoughts didn't trail off mid-sentence, and her mornings, once filled with sighs and hesitation, now began with momentum. It wasn't magic, it was nutrient-driven consistency. Friends at her senior club began to ask what she was doing differently. One said she walked like she had purpose again. Another said she looked less heavy, though she hadn't lost much weight. Margaret explained gently, "It's what I eat in the first hour. It's not about dieting. It's about giving my body what it actually needs." She shared the snack recipe again and again, writing it on note cards, emailing it to nieces and neighbors, even handing it to her pharmacist when he mentioned joint pain. Every time she explained it, she felt more confident. Not because she was a nutritionist, but because she was living proof. Her transformation wasn't flashy, but it was undeniable. She now looked forward to waking up. The stiffness that once greeted her at dawn was mostly gone. The forgetfulness that made her feel lost in her own home had faded. And the fatigue that once chased her back into bed after breakfast? Gone. Margaret had found something precious. Control. Not over time itself, but over how she responded to it. And each morning, as she prepared her bowl, she whispered the same phrase under her breath. "This is how I fight back." Not with force, not with fear, but with food, with care, with wisdom. One spoonful at a time. It was a Sunday morning when Margaret's granddaughter, Lily, visited with a school project about family rituals. She asked everyone to share something they did daily that brought them peace. Her mother talked about tea. Her father mentioned evening walks. When it was Margaret's turn, she smiled and walked Lily into the kitchen. "Let me show you mine," she said. She gathered the ingredients without thinking. Walnuts, pumpkin seeds, blueberries, cinnamon, one soft boiled egg, and laid them out on the counter like treasures. "This little snack," she said softly, "gave me back my mornings." Lily looked up, curious. "How?" Margaret knelt beside her and told her the story. Not just about food, but about how for a long time she had been tired. Not just sleepy, but deeply tired. In her body, in her mind. "I thought it was just part of getting old," she said. "But then I learned that I had been starving my strength without realizing it." She explained how each ingredient had a purpose, and how this ritual, though small, had helped her walk farther, think sharper, and feel more like herself. Lily scribbled notes on her worksheet, then looked up and said, "Can I try it with you tomorrow?" Margaret's eyes filled, not because her secret had been discovered, but because it had been understood. This wasn't just about healing. It was about passing on what works, about making aging visible, gentle, and proud. That next morning, 2 bowls sat on the table, one for strength returned, the other for strength being planted early. Margaret realized then that her greatest victory wasn't just that she felt better. It was that she could show someone else how to do the same. Her ritual had become a legacy, a message to the future. This is how you care for your body and your years. Margaret stood by the window that morning, sunlight warming her face, her bowl of walnuts and blueberries in hand. She didn't feel young. She felt capable. Her joints weren't perfect. Her memory still had soft edges, but she no longer felt like she was vanishing. She felt present, awake, nourished. The snack she once saw as an experiment had become a ritual of restoration. And not just for her body, but for her spirit. It reminded her each day that she still had power, even if time moved forward. That food could be more than fuel. It could be respect. Every spoonful was a quiet declaration. I choose to stay strong. I choose to support my mind. I choose to give my body what it's asking for. And that mindset had transformed how she aged, not as something to fear, but something to guide, like tending a garden that still blooms if given enough care. Her doctor had said it best during her last visit. You're aging on your own terms. And that's exactly what it was. Margaret wasn't chasing trends or miracle diets. She was simply listening to her body, to her mornings, to the wisdom of ingredients used with intention. Now, every day began with calm, with strength, with the kind of focus that doesn't demand attention, but quietly carries you through. And as she watched birds flutter outside her window and took another bite of that sweet, earthy mix, she whispered to herself, "This is enough. I am enough." Aging hadn't disappeared, but the fear had. The weakness had. And in their place stood a woman who had found healing not in anything fancy, but in the smallest bowl of food, given at just the right time, for all the right reasons. And that, Margaret knew, was how strength begins.